Monsieur le Président, mon chef et partenaire, Son Excellence Président Macky Sall, Monsieur le Premier ministre du Sénégal, Mohamed Dionne, mon chef et Monsieur le Premier ministre de la République démocratique du Congo, Augustin Matata Mapon, et mes amis, le ministre des Finances du Sénégal, Amadou Ba, et Monsieur le ministre de l'Agriculture, Papa Sek, distingués délégués, Mesdames et Messieurs. Bonjour à tous. Bienvenue dans la belle ville de Dakar. À cette conférence de haut niveau sur la transformation de l'agriculture en Afrique. Permettez-moi tout d'abord de remercier le président Macky Sall pour son leadership remarquable et son soutien exceptionnel en faveur des grands enjeux de développement en Afrique. En tant que président du nouveau partenariat de développement de l'Afrique, il continue d'être l'avantage garde de grandes initiatives qui sont essentielles pour la croissance accélérée et le développement de notre continent. Je tiens à féliciter Monsieur le Président Macky Sall et le peuple du Sénégal pour la brillante élection du Sénégal au Conseil de la sécurité des Nations Unies. Mais, Monsieur le Président, lorsque nous parlons de sécurité, la sécurité la plus importante est celle du ventre. C'est pourquoi aujourd'hui, Monsieur le Président, la Banque africaine de développement et tous les co-organisateurs sont ravis de travailler en étroite collaboration avec vous et le gouvernement du Sénégal sur cette conférence de haut niveau sur la transformation agricole en Afrique. Nous devons nourrir l'Afrique. Je suis également très heureux de constater que le chef de l'État et plus précisément le Premier ministre Augustin Matata Mapon de la République démocratique du Congo a fait presque 6 heures de vol pour pouvoir venir ici. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Je voudrais surtout saluer l'excellent travail de la Union africaine et du NEPAD sur le programme détaillé pour le développement de l'agriculture africaine CADEP. Je me réjouis également du fait que les co-organisateurs de cette conférence, à savoir la Commission de l'Union africaine et la Commission économique des Nations unies pour l'Afrique, sont représentés ici aujourd'hui par la commissaire de l'Union africaine à l'économie rurale et à l'agriculture, ma très chère sœur Madame Rodapis Tumusime, et le secrétaire exécutif adjoint de l'OCEA, le Dr Abdallah Hamdok. Je suis très heureux de constater que le président Babacar Ndiaye, l'ancien président de la Banque africaine de développement, est ici avec nous aujourd'hui. Monsieur le bienvenu, Monsieur le Président. Nous nous appuyons sur les bases qu'il a posées pour poursuivre l'excellent travail qu'il a accompli en tant que président de la Banque africaine de développement. La forte participation des ministres des Finances et des ministres de l'Agriculture et des gouverneurs de banques centrales, plus important, les plus importantes mobilisations du genre jamais enregistrées en Afrique, envoient un signal fort. L'Afrique est maintenant prête à faire l'agriculture une activité commerciale. Je peux donc dire aujourd'hui que l'agriculture africaine est maintenant ouverte au monde des affaires. Et cette activité commerciale consiste à nourrir l'Afrique et à libérer le potentiel de l'Afrique afin de promouvoir la diversification des économies africaines. Sont présentes ici aujourd'hui des agriculteurs, des représentants de sociétés civiles, du secteur privé, des partenariats au développement et des jeunes entrepreneurs et des représentants de la presse et des chefs de mission diplomatiques au Sénégal et des hauts responsables gouvernementaux. Votre présence, votre voix et votre soutien, symbole de notre ferme volonté et de notre engagement, nous montrent clairement que le moment est venu de nourrir l'Afrique. Cet appel à l'action explique la convergence ici aujourd'hui de plus de 500 personnes venant de 4 coins du monde. Quelle mobilisation exceptionnelle! Ladies and gentlemen, nothing is more important than food. While Africa has risen on the back of the new discoveries of oil and gas fields, no one eats oil and no one eats gas. People eat food. Access to food in quantity and in quality is a fundamental human right. Just 2 weeks ago, at the United Nations General Assembly, the world took a bold decision to approve the Sustainable Development Goals. In my meeting with the UN Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, he told me, and I quote, "The Sustainable Development Goals must succeed in Africa. If they do not succeed here, they cannot be said to have succeeded." Africa is clearly the continent on the rise. 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world are right here in Africa. Real income has risen by 30% in the last 10 years. Foreign direct investment has risen by $64 billion, while remittances has reached $56 billion, exceeding total official development assistance. Despite the slow global economic growth, the continent continues to grow at 3.6% and projected to increase to 3.8% in 2016. But that is only one side of the trajectory. The other side of the trajectory, which we must face, is that the growth process is highly unequal. Africa today has one of the highest inequalities in the world. Over 400 million people in sub-Saharan Africa live on less than $1 a day. While poverty rates have fallen in Africa, the absolute number of poor has increased. And Africa is the only region where the absolute number of poor increased in the world. And I must be very clear about this, that Africa does not intend to have the comparative advantage in producing poverty. Africa accounts for 20 of the 24 countries with stunting rates of over 40%. Just last week, I was in Ghana with President Mahama of Ghana, and also with Prime Minister of DRC, who was with us, where the World Bank president launched a report, Poverty in a Rising Africa. And I'm pleased that my dear friend, President of the World Bank, Jim Kim, will be addressing you later today by a video from Washington, D.C. But this is exactly what we must change. With the population of Africa expected to rise to 2.5 billion by 2050, and 4 billion by the turn of the century, and the share of the poor rising, the question we must ask is, how will Africa feed this growing population? Will it simply depend on growing food imports? Clearly, such a scenario is unacceptable, given that over 65% of the arable land left to feed 9 billion people in the world by 2050 lies right here in Africa. Africa must rise up and unlock its full agricultural potential with all its bright sunshine, abundant water resources, and cheap labor. Africa should be a global powerhouse in food and agriculture. Africa cannot eat potential. The last time I checked, there is no market for selling potential. In Nigeria, we unlocked that potential when I was Minister of Agriculture, and I'm pleased that my former permanent secretary, Architect Senator Chono, who helped me to do this, is sitting right in front here. This convinces me that the agricultural transformation that we talk about can occur in a very short period of time. The agricultural transformation agenda, which we implemented with wide-ranging reforms with sharp focus on private sector-led input delivery systems, value chain development, and financing systems, led to an increase of 21 million metric tons of food within 3 years. Food import bill in the country fell from an all-time high of $11 billion in 2009 to $3.2 billion by 2014. This provided much-needed macroeconomic and fiscal stabilization. Despite the devaluation of the currency, food prices did not change significantly. Direct farm jobs expanded by 3.8 million between 2012 and 2014, and the FAO gave Nigeria an award for cutting by half the number of people that suffer from hunger. Rwanda, and I'm chair of my sister, who was the former Minister of Agriculture of Rwanda, Agnes Kalibata, now President of Alliance for a Green Revolution Africa, is here. She was the one who led the work in Rwanda. Rwanda was able to also cut back the share of its population that is hungry from 55% in 2000 to 21% in 2010. Ethiopia has made significant progress through its agricultural transformation, reaching 4.4 million farmers. The government of Senegal, under the remarkable leadership of President Macky Sall, is driving a massive rice revolution. Rice production continues to grow at 62.5% annually, and the rice production has grown from 400,000 metric tons to 1.5 million metric tons in just 1 year. And the country will attain rice self-sufficiency by 2017. What a remarkable feat. Please give it up to the President. Burkina Faso quadrupled its cotton production from 150,000 metric tons to 690,000 metric tons in 1995 to 2007 due to agricultural production. We can, ladies and gentlemen, without any doubt, eliminate extreme poverty and end hunger and malnutrition in Africa through large-scale agricultural transformations. Yes, yes, and yes, it can be done. We must now scale up these and other success stories all across Africa. We must accelerate investment in research and extension systems. Private and public extension systems should be encouraged to help spur agricultural transformation on the continent. And we must scale up social cash transfer programs to ensure households have access to quality, nutritious food, as has been ably demonstrated by Brazil's Zero Hunger Initiative. And we must also use climate-smart agricultural and financial risk mitigation systems, including disaster bonds and insurance systems that build greater resilience for Africans' economies. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa must accelerate agro-allied industrial development. We must not be mistaken by the conventional economic theory that reminds us of the need for labor to leave agriculture and move to the industrial sector. Where is the industrial sector to move to in Africa today? The manufacturing sector accounts for only 11% of the economies of sub-Saharan Africa. The reality is that agro-industrialization has the greatest potential for Africa to achieve more rapid and inclusive growth and create jobs. Agriculture sector generates 4 times more employment than any other sector. If you want industrialization in Africa and massive job creation, then focus on industrializing the agricultural sector. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous avons invité à cette conférence de haut niveau plusieurs ministres des Finances, des Agricultures, ainsi que les gouverneurs de banques centrales. Il est temps que les ministres des Finances aient une perception différente de l'agriculture. Ce n'est qu'un transformant rapidement l'agriculture que l'Afrique pour sortir de centaines de millions de personnes de la pauvreté et de conduire vers la richesse. L'Afrique doit libérer la richesse de son sol, pas seulement la richesse minérale et pétrolière. Avec la chute des prix mondiaux des matières premières, Les pays africains qui dépendent de l'exportation des produits primaires font maintenant face à l'aggravation des déficits de comptes courants et aux déséquilibres budgétaires nationaux. À mesure que le devise se déprécie, les coûts d'importation des produits alimentaires augmentent, ce qui exacerbe la revendication portant sur la hausse de salaires nominaux et l'exercice d'une pression accrue sur les finances publiques. L'Afrique dépense aujourd'hui 35 milliards de dollars par an dans l'importation de produits alimentaires et en important que celles pour produire. Et pourtant, elle émet l'obligation des devises à hauteur de 30 milliards de dollars pour financer son développement. En transformant simplement l'agriculture en un continent autosuffisant sur le plan alimentaire, ces ressources pourront servir au développement sans qu'il soit nécessaire d'aller vers le marché de capitaux internationaux très coûteux. Un plan audacieux de transformation agricole stimulera la production alimentaire locale, réduira le budget réservé à l'importation des produits alimentaires et permettra de conserver des devises, d'accroître le volume de dépenses nationales et de réaliser une stabilité macroéconomique et budgétaire très robuste. For this to happen, we must change the approach to agriculture on our continent. Agriculture is not a development or social sector program. Neither is it a way of life. Agriculture is a business. And we must take a full value chain approach from the farm to the table. It requires greater investment by the private sector all across the agricultural value chains, including modern seed and fertilizer companies, agricultural mechanization, irrigation and water management, warehousing, commodity exchanges, food manufacturing and processing, logistics, cold storage, and transport. The size of the food and agricultural markets in Africa is projected to reach $1 trillion by 2030. To take advantage of this, Africa must rapidly invest in supporting the development of agro-industry. Africa should not be a consumption center. It must be an agro-industrial center. Africa must export processed cocoa, not cocoa beans. It must export specialized coffee with what I say distinctively aroma of Africa instead of coffee beans. And export finished textile products, not cotton lint. The remarkable progress of Kenya, Tanzania, Ghana, and Ethiopia in the global horticulture industry shows that with well-designed policies and financing and infrastructure support, Africa can get to the top of the global value chains. For this to happen, we need energy. Lack of electricity and the unreliable power supply affects the cost of running irrigation systems, leads to massive food losses, and is the major reason by industries for not being competitive. That is why, on my assumption of office as president of the African Development Bank, I launched a new deal on energy for Africa, together with several development partners. Africa is simply tired of being in the dark. By lighting up and powering Africa, and through the deployment of renewable off-grid and mini-grid systems across rural areas, industries will spring up all across rural areas of Africa. They will process and add value to food and agricultural products. They will create new zones of economic prosperity all across rural Africa. As this happens, the fiscal space and taxable base of economies will rise, and massive number of jobs will be created. This is why we must now invest heavily on quality and integrated rural infrastructure, from roads, rail, ports, and irrigation. We must change our approach to rural infrastructure and focus on development of agricultural corridors and staple crop processing zones that will attract the private sector to invest in the rural space. Ministers of Finance should provide fiscal incentives for the private sector to move into rural areas to set up food manufacturing hubs. I must say, yesterday, quand j'étais avec Monsieur le Président, on avait discuté concernant le lac. Il y avait le lac Guéré. Et ce lac, c'est ça qui alimente la ville de Dakar. 40% de l'eau, ça vient de ce lac-là. Mais les gens qui sont autour de ce lac n'ont pas accès à l'irrigation. Donc, j'ai demandé à Monsieur le Président. Il m'avait dit, Président de la BAD, je voulais changer totalement le milieu rural du Sénégal. Il dit, aide-moi à faire la transformation de ces zones. Je lui avais dit, Monsieur le Président, on allait très vite. Ce qu'on va faire, c'est mettre l'industrialisation autour de ces zones, aider les paysans d'avoir accès à l'irrigation. Et Monsieur le Président a dit, Monsieur le ministre des Finances, il dit, fais ça très vite et qu'il n'y aura pas aucun impôt pour tous les secteurs privés qui vont là-bas. So, Monsieur le Premier ministre des Finances, c'est vrai, non? So ministers of finance should do similar things. These hubs should be supported with upgraded infrastructure, especially water, roads, and energy. In Nigeria, 14 of such zones have been designed. Similar efforts are going on in the Democratic Republic of Congo by the Prime Minister, and more is needed all across Africa. They will allow Africa to achieve economies of scale and scope in food production, processing, and value addition, and create a veritable industrial growth engine all across rural economies. We need to critically look at how to accelerate commercial financing for agriculture. Banks do not lend to agriculture, and less than 3% of total bank lending in Africa goes to a sector that accounts for 70% of all employment and 40% of GDP. Lack of access to affordable finance leads to underinvestment in agricultural technologies, growth of agro-allied industries, and investments in infrastructure. A financing boost is needed for the agriculture sector. Successful experiences from Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, and Ghana, where I happen to have worked over many years on risk-sharing instruments to reduce the risk of lending by commercial banks to agriculture in these countries, have shown that lending to agriculture is profitable. Let me repeat, lending to agriculture is profitable. As Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria, I work with the Central Bank of Nigeria to establish a risk-sharing facility of $350 million to leverage $3.5 billion in financing from commercial banks into the agricultural sector. Banks, which were first reluctant to lend to the sector, began to lend. The share of total portfolio of banks devoted to agriculture rose from 0.7% in 2011 to 5% within 5 years. Non-performing loans were zero. By fixing agricultural value chains and de-risking the financial value chains, Africa can leverage billions of dollars in financing from its domestic financial markets into agricultural value chains. And we must direct local capital markets, bond markets, equity markets, sovereign wealth funds, as well as private equity funds and venture capital funds to provide access to long-term capital to finance agricultural value chains and necessary infrastructural support systems. De lors, la question est de savoir quels sont les rôles des banques centrales et les ministres des Finances. Premièrement, ils peuvent apporter des fonds publics pour partager des risques de crédit de banques commerciales. Deuxièmement, ils peuvent mettre en place des mécanismes d'appui technique pour le renforcement des capacités de banques en vue de les aider à bien cerner des risques et à fixer efficacement les prix de leurs produits. Troisièmement, ils peuvent appuyer des initiatives d'inclusion financière pour promouvoir l'accès des exploitants agricoles aux prêts, à l'épargne et aux produits d'assurance en tirant parti de la propagation rapide de la téléphonie mobile en Afrique. La réussite de M-Pesa au Kenya, avec un montant annuel de transfert d'argent de 26 milliards de dollars, est une excellente illustration de la façon dont l'exploitation agricole peuvent accéder aux fonds provenant de l'épargne, de crédit et des envois de fonds des migrants. L'expérience remarquable du Nigeria avec l'utilisation de téléphones portables, porte-monnaie on appelle, pour atteindre 14,5 millions d'exploitations agricoles avec les intrants agricoles directement sur leur téléphone devrait être reproduit compte tenu de la manière dont cette approche a aidé à améliorer la transparence, la responsabilité et l'intégrité dans l'utilisation des fonds publics destinés à l'exploitation agricole. To rapidly modernize agriculture, we must get the youth engaged in the sector. We must change the perception of youths on agriculture. They must see agriculture as a business, and I hope many of them, at least the ones that are men, will wear bow tie like myself. In Nigeria, based on the work we did, a new generation of young commercial farmers is emerging, known as agropreneurs. They are graduates who are now engaged in major agribusinesses. Some of them are here today. One of them, in particular, a medical doctor, Dr. Aroge. I don't know if you're here. If you're here, you might stand. Okay, you can stand. It's right over there. He's a medical doctor. He got excited about agriculture as a business, and he put aside his stethoscope. Today, he has a loan of $600,000 to establish his cassava processing factory. He clearly has understood that even medical doctors would tell you, after making recommendations to you, that take 3 tablets a day only after food. The International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, IITA, in Nigeria has started a revolution of youths in the agricultural sector, with many young graduates now running their own businesses. Many of them are here with us today. If you're here from IITA, young folk, please stand up and be recognized. The IITA folks are here? Yeah. They're all graduates, really exciting young people. And they are from various countries. African countries must rapidly transform agriculture and modernize the sector to attract young people. Private equity funds should be established to support young agribusiness entrepreneurs. Ladies and gentlemen, we must concentrate efforts to ensure that women farmers benefit significantly from renewed efforts to boost agriculture. Women form a significant share of farmers, but they continue to face challenges in terms of access to land rights, limited access to labor-saving technologies, and finance. The evidence is clear that when supported, women can help boost food production. And I can tell you, because I work in this zone, they're actually much better than men in doing agriculture. It is time, therefore, that a major effort is put forward on supporting women farmers in Africa. That is why I am pleased to let you know that the African Development Bank, and my special envoy for gender is here, and she can discuss most of this later in the panels. The African Development Bank will work with other partners to establish a $300 million facility for affirmative finance action for women in Africa, which will be used to deploy risk-sharing instruments to leverage $3 billion in commercial financing from microfinance institutions and commercial banks for women and women-owned businesses. Sorry, men, I can't help you yet. By providing greater attention to labor-saving technologies, especially food processing technologies, women will free up time and invest this in more productive income generation activities. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to modernize the agriculture sector to improve the functioning of agricultural markets. Much rapid progress is being made on the development of commodity exchanges to improve farmers' access to markets. The success of the Ethiopian Commodity Exchange is impressive. The East Africa Commodity Exchange is also a very good example. Commodity exchanges allows for better price discovery and can be effectively linked to warehouse receipt systems that allow farmers to use their gains as collaterals for accessing credit from financial institutions. Il ne faut aucun doute que si l'on investit dans la transformation agricole et le développement de l'agro-industrie, L'avenir de l'Afrique sera radieux. Les revenus augmenteront. Les emplois seront créés. Les exportations se développeront. La rentabilité croissance de l'agro-industrie en Afrique accroîtra le paiement d'impôts et d'export. Et les économies connaîtront un essor. L'agriculture sera un secteur créateur de richesses et non un secteur de transfert de fonds sociaux. Et bon nombre de ministres des Finances et de gouverneurs de banques centrales seront réjouissants. I think central bank governors and ministers will be happy when you have that kind of agriculture. So let me conclude. We must achieve 4 goals for Africa to drive the agricultural transformation and agro-allied industrialization all across Africa. Some may think of them as ambitious. I agree. But we must never have low ambitions and aspirations for Africa. Collectively, our goals within 10 years must be to eliminate extreme poverty in Africa, end hunger and malnutrition in Africa, turn Africa into a net exporter, and move Africa to the top of global value chains where we have comparative advantage. Then you will hear a different song in Africa. It will be the sounds of Africans' children running down the large fields all across Africa, well-fed, in school, and doing well. They will be singing a song, better at last, better at last. Thank God Almighty that our lives are better at last. We can make this happen, so let us rise up and do it. Thank you very much, and have a great meeting.